Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another edition of Paratopia Oculus. Right? Is it Oculus? Is that what we decide on now?
Omnivorous, I believe we went with.
Omnivorous? Okay, well, whatever. That show. Welcome to that show.
Maybe they should name the show. Maybe the fans would like to name the show.
That's a good contest.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm here with my co-host, Jeremy Vaeni. Say hello, Jeremy.
Oh, hi, everybody. It's me.
Yeah, that's right. We're doing a serious show here.
Yeah, this is the NPR of comedy. What?
Right, the NPR of comedy. Jesus. At any rate, another riveting show for you tonight. It's just Jeremy and I. Again, you know us, you love us. Maybe not so much the second thing, but you know us. And so...
better the devil you know.
Better the devil you know, indeed. And so tonight we're going to be discussing shared experiences. What they mean, or what they may mean, because we don't really know anything more than you.
No, don't sell them that. That's how we that's how we remain incognito in the field.
We know things.
We've got answers, people.
Yeah, we don't know anything. So we're going to be talking about literally shared experiences, and I think that's going to lead into a great many other subtopics. That's going to be our jumping off point is, what do shared experiences mean? How do they define within the framework of a paranormal experience in general? And something that I had that brought up to Jeremy earlier, which was how does an altered state of consciousness play into a shared experiences versus one person or another together experiencing the same thing or something different in perceptual terms. So, Jeremy, you want to kind of kick this off or launch us off into this?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, is there a difference in perception between an individual experience by yourself and something with other people? And then further, let's think about, is there a difference between a shared hallucination and an individual hallucination, and what is the crossover there? I got some thoughts, but in terms of the singular versus shared witness experience, my question, and really it's a question for you, Jeff, because you're also, well, maybe not so much anymore, I don't know, but you've been known in the past to dabble in the research aspect of this.
Right.
Do you know? Do you know if there are if there's any case of a shared experience where the participants are with each other the entire time and claim to remember the same things? Like when I saw a UFO going to Vermont, I was with my mother and sister. But my sister was, even though we were all there in the same car, my sister was completely disinterested. So at least one of our party just went back to her book and ignored what was going on. Is it always that way? Or are there people, even during an abduction, who are brought into the same room and claim to recall the same exact experience or not? Is it always brought up? Because that might even speak to the issue of altered states, an altered state of consciousness. It would sort of lead me to believe that there's something like that going on, and that's the reason that you can't have a shared recall of the same thing. But I don't know that that's true or not, and maybe you do. So do you know?
I mean, at least in my experience, it's, and I'm trying to think of like specific ones just to bring to mind, but I found that, in other words, to have a contiguous experience with another person that is of this ilk, and have them both recall precisely, like I was doing this while this was going on with her or him, to have a very good narrative of that is, I found to be very rare. I did not find a large number of people, like you brought up your sister in the back seat, and you and your mom having this UFO sighting, and she just being disinterested. I hear a lot of that. I have heard a lot of that in years past of, I just wasn't paying attention. Like, I know they saw what they saw because they talk about it, but, I wasn't paying attention. And my question always is the same for, I don't want to call it an excuse, but an answer as such as that, my answer is always, or my question posed to that person is, how could you not? How could you be so disinterested in that? Why didn't that make you at least curious to look? And the answer is always the same. They don't know. I don't know. I didn't pay any attention.
Like, even I was thinking you and your wife, when you had the open your eye, that experience.
Yes.
One of you, she was kept in the car, right? And you were brought somewhere.
Supposedly, yeah.
Okay, so unless it was such a hallucinatory experience that you weren't brought anywhere.
Right. I was definitely outside the truck, that's for sure. I mean, based on what I know about this whole experience, it's odds on getting a solid answer. Did I go anywhere? I have a feeling I was somewhere else. Yes, I do absolutely feel that.
So, even though you both can, you can corroborate the same story from your different points of view, you can't corroborate the same story narrative. Like, she can't say, "Oh, I was brought there with him and I saw this stuff too." And you likewise can't say, "Oh yeah, I was in the truck. I experienced what she experienced in the truck." Like, does it ever go that way? I was thinking, like, maybe it's unfair to even ask this, because one, I don't remember, but the Allagash guys, I don't remember whether they had a shared experience or not. I tend to want to say they didn't, that they were, they had separate experiences, but then also, of course, hypnosis is the other factor in making them sound like one thing.
Right. I mean, I think as far as Lisa and I's thing go, that is fairly corroborative up to a certain point, up to the point where I'm somewhere else, quote unquote. We pretty much saw exactly the same thing, but that was, for lack of a better way to put it, a close proximity UFO sighting to literally molding into a close encounter experience. So once it got into the close encounter experience, that's when things started to get disjointed and separate, where she remembers a set of events that led up to me getting in the car, and I remember a whole different set of events leading up to getting in the car. But we both pretty much have a continuous experience up to that, that point where I was, quote, no longer there. That's one thing. And I can also point out the visitor in the room, that we had a shared experience there that neither of us really talked about until some days later. And that was like an independent confirmation thing. And Tyler Coachon rather felt that was a really big deal. It was a really horrifying deal to me. But that too was very, like, we both saw the same thing. We both had the same reaction to it, which was to go back to sleep. Which again, that to me there is a definitive thread between, I don't know what that is, I'm going back to sleep. When in a waking state, you would go, yeah, I know what that is. Or in a normal state, you would go, yeah, I know what that is. It's somebody standing there. Get up, figure out what's going on. No, the answer is go back to sleep. Or the answer is, well, I can't tell Jeff about this, so I'll just roll over and go to sleep. Meanwhile, there's a 5-foot something standing in the floor. And it's got a head like a basketball. I mean, really? Come on. There's something about that ties into your sister being completely disinterested in the back seat. Meanwhile, you and Mom are having this experience in the front seat that is, what?
Right. Well, actually, she was in the front seat, just so you know. I was in the back.
Well, either way, I mean, it's it makes no sense.
Right.
There is something going on there that is an altered state of some sort, but I don't believe it's the kind of altered state that we think of when we say altered state. I don't necessarily believe it's always that pervasive in the experience to be able to call it that.
Well, is it influenced? That's the,
Yeah, influence is a better word. There's an influence. Lisa remarked to our house guest that night, when we both decided or both told each other, yeah, we saw something standing in the room. And she said, well, I saw it, I know what I saw. And it was a very, I mean, for people who don't know, I just mentioned, well, to my house guest that Lisa wouldn't be at all happy if she knew what I thought I saw standing in the bedroom the other night. And she says, I already know. And then she went on to describe it before I said a word. So I knew what I saw. She didn't know what I had experienced, but yet she saw it too and conveyed exactly the same thing to me, which set me into hysterics. That aside, the house guest says to me, well, how does that happen? How did it get in the house, number one? Well, that's the least of your questions when you're talking about a non-human entity in your house. How it got in is not the question, right? And the other question is, he says, and how could you just roll over and go to sleep when there's something standing in your bedroom? And Lisa made a really good statement. She said, I don't know, it just does something to you. And I like that. I like that it does something to you. It makes it okay for that to happen. It makes it okay to roll over and go to sleep. It makes it okay to keep reading your book while mom and brother are having a major sighting in the car. And you're in the car too. You know, it's not like she was in a house trailer behind the car. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I almost wonder too if this is something that in some way is interconnected with us, either an aspect of ourselves projected outward or something from another dimension that needs us to perceive it to be here. You know, whatever theory you'd like to throw on that. If it is so interconnected with us and intimately so, then could some of that sedation just be like, yeah, on the surface, it appears to be a stranger, but on some level, you know it's connected to you, and so it's okay.
I mean, I think a question to ask. I mean, here's a question for you. How do you feel? You know, you're Jeremy, and you can only speak from Jeremy's point of view in this case, but you know both these people. You've lived all your life with these people. How is your sister fundamentally different from you and your mother?
Well, I think she is, the most obvious thing is how extroverted she is. And she has sort of a manic energy about her and is always on. She's one of those people who's always on. Other than that, I'm not really certain. She is a big reader, so she
what about
really
as
loved
far
that book.
As
but I mean, in terms of like looking into these things, I mean, my mother didn't really care about any of this stuff and want to talk about it until I sort of force fed it to her. And actually, it was the other way. It was like my sister was the one who would tell me of UFO sightings and things that she had, or of watches that don't work. You know, she doesn't wear a watch because they just stopped working. Right. You know, but she just says these things and then has zero interest in their possible meaning or context or anything.
Okay. So I guess the question is,
bounces off her. Somehow the whole thing bounces off her. She's not interested.
And that is, I think there is something to that because that is like, I remember when, well, hell, I remember in the aftermath of seeing the big-headed thing in the room, I could not sleep in this room. Not until the sun was coming up was I going to bed. It wasn't happening. I don't care how many lights you want to turn on. I don't care if you want to turn the ceiling light on. I'm not sleeping. I can't turn my back to that wall thinking that this thing is standing there at any given moment and I could roll over and see it. This is how deeply that this affected me. I was really freaked out. Lisa, on the other hand, the very next night, came up here, turned off every light in the room, left the window blinds open, and got into bed and was sleeping. How's that possible? So I asked her the next morning, I said, you know, we see something in the room. It's dark. I thought maybe part of the reason the thing was there at all was because we were in a very dark room, and normally I keep some kind of light source on in the room. It's just my thing. I don't like pitch black. Lisa could live in pitch black. But when she sleeps, she likes it dark and cold. Two things I detest. And And I said, how do you do that? How do you go up there and turn off all the lights and leave the windows not open, but the blinds up? I don't like that either. Lee Townsend used to say that he didn't like that either. Looking out the window at dark is not good. My son doesn't like looking out the window at dark. But yet she did it and went to sleep like a baby. I said, how do you do that? She's like, well, what do you want me to do about it? It was there. I saw it. What do you want me to do past that? And I'm like, doesn't it bother you? She's like, I got other things that bother me. It's like they can't be bothered with this.
Yeah,
and that sounds very much like your sister. Like,
yeah,
well, I can't be bothered with this. I got life to live.
Exactly.
Like,
well, I had that conversation with her back in probably high school or, somewhere around in there, maybe college. But it was definitely, one of the first sort of big conversations about this stuff where I would have that conversation with her. Why aren't you interested? You're saying that this stuff happens to you, and yet you're making fun of me, or you're trying to find some sort of psychological answer to it, but you're admitting this stuff too. And she's like, well, I just don't want it to be real. Like, even if it is, and she's not, she's not admitting that it is, but she's saying, even if it is, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't control that. So I would rather not think about it. And, it's interesting too, when I think about like her, the way that she ponders life, the universe, and everything, and has depth to her is through the arts, through acting and directing and that sort of thing, and pining away at Shakespeare, and I don't do that. My thing has always been more sort of straightforward, philosophical, actually pondering life, the universe, and everything on its own terms. Right. And I wonder if there's something in there too, because you're the same way.
I think that is it. I do. I mean, I have asked my mom several times during conversations where I clearly have lost her in the course of a conversation. My mom's not a stupid woman. But, I lose her and I just look at her sometimes and I go, Mom, what's wrong with me? What? She's like, you're just looking for something that I don't know that you're going to find, but you've always been that way, and she's like, you've always asked very strange questions. Even as a little kid, you asked some very strange questions that I thought, what in the world would he be pondering something like that for? And I don't get that sense that, I get the sense that at least Lisa, she does ponder those questions when I bring them up to her, but I don't get the feeling that that's something that she ponders the way I do, or the way you do, or the way some listeners we know do. I think they ponder things about, and I think your sister would very much be like this, that they ponder things like, their interests. They delve deep into their interests. They delve deep into, and that's not to say that we don't. Excuse me, I've got other things in my life besides this, things that give me great joy and great pride and all of that. But I realized, for me at least, that a lot of this stuff exists within the construct of the greater reality that I recognize. And I find myself ultimately frustrated sometimes that other people don't recognize that reality or blow it off. And I think we've talked a lot about, where does our anger come from at this stuff, or the passion of it? Where does that come from? I think that's where it comes from ultimately.
Well, when you think about it, think about
if a bear dances through a ballroom and you're the only one who sees it, right. You and another guy, and you're like, really, people? Like, what the? Yeah, then that would tend to get a little frustrating after a while.
Well, if you think about the arts and think about, acting, because most of my friends, at least back in New York, not so much here in Hawaii, were actors and that sort of thing. And really, it boggles my mind how they can, year after year, go and do the Shakespeare Festival somewhere. They're always doing the same 5 or 6 Shakespearean plays and playing the same characters over and over. And, trying to find some other way to act the same repetitious thing. And they find it immensely interesting. And I look at that and I go, that's clubbing yourself over the head at some point. I mean, how can you just keep doing the same thing and inhabiting this character over and over and over again? But it's like engaging mystery on the level of sort of trying to figure out what it is to be a human, or what, the psychology of people, because that's what all these plays are, right? They're all illuminating our personal psychology, and they're all sort of giving us a clue that we're all in this together.
At their core, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, like all of our emotions, Shakespearean emotions translate in any language, in any culture, because we have, universal factors about us as human beings that transcend everything else. And, but I look at that and I go, well, that's not enough. Like, there's something else, So I could only handle so much of that, I think. And then eventually I would get bored or disinterested, because human psychology is like nothing. At some point, yeah, that's interesting, and it's nice to figure all that out, but then what? And I think that's a huge difference, because there is no answer to the then what. So, perhaps reality itself gives you the then what. It goes, oh, okay, you want the then what? Well, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you've got the next thing to bring to your tribe, to act out in front of the campfire and go, look, this is something beyond the thing that we were just acting out. Here's a whole new answer. Right. There is some element of truth to that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a response to, and that would explain why, a lot of creative people seem to have these experiences, is because it is ultimately inspiration for everything else. I mean, look at what religion, of any type has done for the creative process. I mean, it's spawned masterpieces. So I do think that something like that is ultimately tries to inspire you in some way. I mean, I believe that every style like Baroque, classical, neoclassical, modernism, all of these styles, I believe all of these styles exist somewhere, and they're waiting to be plucked like fruit from a tree. And so the question is, how do you access those?
Well, how do you access those if you're a cover band?
Well, exactly.
You see, that's what acting is to me. Acting is, at some point, you're a glorified version of a cover band, and I think it's, you're right. So to me, as I'm just thinking about this now, I hadn't thought about this before, but it's almost like there are certain people who find the depth of self or the depth of mystery in viewing things as a viewer. Then there are people who have more depth to them, or more sort of intelligence, or more talent, or whatever the right word is, and so they act it out. So they sort of mine it through this other dimension, not just watching, but acting it out, or writing it out, or playing it out, But then there's the level beyond that, which is like, that's still not getting to it, and I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what I'm talking about when I say that's not getting to it. I just know it isn't. And then that's when the it sort of comes alive and says, through Trickster or whatever, well, here's something else. Here's some new insight. Here's some spark of something.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I would title it insight. I mean, novelty has always been a really good word to me. Ever since I heard Terence McKenna frame it in the way he did, the novelty, of it all is a big, huge part of it. I mean, I think ultimately it's, I can't say this and not bring up the connective tissues with a religion, and how religions are all at each other for one reason or another, are at each other because their ideologies don't mesh, they don't fit correctly. And look at the infighting that we have, excuse me, in the paranormal. You can't get a bunch of people to agree on the same thing. There's always going to be some little chink in the armor or a monkey wrench in the gears that separate and divide these people, because they're all perceiving this something in their own way, whether that be through desire or belief, or personal experience, or hero worship, which I think are the three big factors. You can't get people to agree on something like that. Just like you can't get people to agree in totality about a piece of art. Everybody kind of takes what they want from it. Everybody kind of picks and chooses what they like and what they don't like. I mentioned in a private email exchange that I was having with Jeremy and Tyler and Jack Brewer and some other people about Jeff Kripal and the books that he's written that talk about this interesting symbiotic relationship with inspiration and imagination versus events that then manifest and happen in real life in often direct ways, but sometimes in very, very bizarre and very twisted ways. And I have to wonder if that kind of thing isn't a shared experience of one kind or another in a different wrapper. Like, what was the purpose of the thing in the bedroom, if not to freak me out, or if not to make me question, Lisa, why aren't you freaking out about this? All of these things are spawned from that single event that was on its face pretty damn tame. It stood there. It didn't say anything. It didn't do anything. It wavered slightly, but it didn't even scare me. But yet that one event has spawned more questions for me than I could possibly shake a stick at. And I don't even know that the formulation of those questions are why it was standing there to begin with. It just does this by proxy of its own nature. It inspires more thought, more mental exercises. And I think ultimately it is a visceral slap in the face, too. When one gets too complacent with this, and Jeremy, you can attest to this as well, when you get too comfortable with this, that's when it throws you the curveball, and, it's a dinger in the hip, that's when that kind of thing seems to occur. My question is that us? Like, is that a product of us saying, well, I got this. Nope.
Right.
Are we facilitating that, or is it responding to our ambivalence of it?
When you go out on ghost hunts and you go to Gettysburg and that sort of thing,
mm-hmm.
Do you get the same feeling you do? It's interesting. I hadn't thought about this either until just now, but you're somebody who at least used to be afraid to take the garbage out at night or go out at night, or like you were saying, keep the shades open. And yet you want to go out at night with your recorder to Gettysburg and hunt ghosts. Mm-hmm. So that does not present the same level of fear, I take it, as this other, visitor phenomena or whatever you want to call it.
No.
So does it, do you know if ghost phenomena, do they even inspire these same sorts of questions?
To me, it's a whole different set, which ultimately for me, if I had a choice, and I don't, but if I did have a choice to be involved in one field or another, I think I would have chosen the ghost field over UFOs. I feel like ghost phenomena is a lot more accessible. I know that sounds dumb coming from me, but it seems a lot more accessible. It seems to be, at least for want of a better way to explain it, a little bit more localized than UFOs are, of course. There is fear with that.
You can have the same shared experience, right?
You can. I find it now that I've, for the past 5 or 6 years, I've kind of been more into more studying of the ghost phenomena than the UFO thing. I think you get more shared experiences with the ghost phenomena than you do UFOs for sure. But you also get split perceptions in the ghost phenomena. You also get, the, for some people, the rampant fear. I just made a comment on Facebook the other day about these uber macho douchebag men that are, posing in this advertisement for their group that, you can't tell the difference between this and a wrestling poster, in my opinion. And you're looking at this and you're going, these are the type of people who go into a haunted location saying they're looking for ghosts. And yet if a chair flips on its end or they hear a voice, they're the first ones running for the door. You do get that. But I think there are other people with a lot more valid reasons for the fight or flight when it comes to that. I mean, the bottom line is we don't know what ghost phenomena is any more than we know what the UFO phenomena is.
But do you get disinterest? I mean, could somebody stick to their book in the face of a ghost, or does that not happen?
I think if you can get, as with most things in this, if you can get past the initial oogity boogity, it's there, I'm here. But again, these things are often fleeting. It's, at least as far as I know, it would be an exceedingly rare thing to see a full apparition and have it stay there, react to you. I think Mark Nesbitt asked me, if you were out on the battlefield and you saw a soldier that was clearly a ghost, what would you say to it? And I would say, where are you? What is your perception? How do you see me? What do you see? What's going on around you? Do you see that gas station over there? That kind of dialogue. And you ask some other people that, and it's like, well, why would you ask that? Well, because isn't the ghost perception more important than your own? What does he perceive? When you're not here, where are you? That sort of thing. But I don't think that I think that you would have more the presence of mind, because so much, and if you notice this is a really fascinating thing about the ghost thing. If you notice, a lot of the apparatus used, from the ridiculous Frank's box to the K2 meter to your EVP recorder and that can be in any kind of form that you want, to laser grids and all these things are very, very much looking for things on the very edges of perception. It's not to say that they wouldn't get something of a more tangible phenomena were it to present itself. It certainly would. But isn't it interesting that we're always interested in the very thin, very on the edge of human perception? We're interested in what's going on there. Isn't it fascinating that we don't necessarily... Isn't it fascinating that the EVP phenomena is based upon taking your recordings home in the safety of your bedroom or your office and cranking up the volume and listening? This is not something that happens necessarily, and it has happened. What I'm saying is, by the majority, it doesn't happen in the moment. It's very thin. It's very transparent. It's very transient. You may not even know that you're having a conversation with a disembodied person, if that's indeed what it represents. This stuff is a lot more easy to keep at arm's length than the UFO thing, in my opinion, at least. The ghost thing, this is not to say something can't follow you home. It's not to say that you can't bring it to you. It's not to say you can't be tormented by the ghost thing. You most certainly can be as tormented by that as any other paranormal phenomena. But by and large, so many people would not be going out and actively hunting these apparitions were that to be the norm of this field. It's not the norm. I think TV has poisoned a lot of people's perceptions of that. That is not the norm by any stretch. It happens rarely, and under the right circumstances, I think that happens. But isn't it interesting that ghosts being as popular as it is, this is very, again, on the edge of perception. The tools are all gauged to that and that alone. Things that we can't hear, things we can't see, fields we can't see or touch or feel. It's interesting that this is where we hunt the ghost, in this liminal between perception and non-perception.
Well, I mean...
I'm just pointing that out. I think that's a fascinating bit.
Yeah, well, it's also... I mean, it sounds like it's link to visitor phenomena. That's the link between it all, which is...
Yeah.
You can bring it home with you, but it's still for you. It's still not something that everyone's going to see and hear. It's not something that the skeptic in the room is going to lose their religion, as it were, over.
Right.
So... Yeah, and it's weird, too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if these things are real. It's like, could you imagine just going out to a field asking questions and hearing an answer? I mean, how different would our lives be if we just heard the voices, you know?
Yeah.
But that never happens, and that doesn't happen with UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot and anything else, you know.
Right.
Go down the list of stuff. Right. The commonality is just that. You know, before we might have called it hiding or something like that, but I think liminal state will do.
Yeah, I mean, I question whether someone could actually handle an elongated conversation with an alien or with a ghost that isn't in some kind of altered state of one kind or another. I think all contact experiences of any kind, whether it be a ghost or an alien or some other type of being, I think that exists in an altered state. That's not to say that you can't trust it or know that you were in a certain spot at a certain time, but you have to use that caveat that, you know, your perceptions are extremely malleable by this stuff. So you got to keep that in mind when you're studying it. That's an important bit, is that your own perceptions are greatly colored. I mean, this thing works perception like an artist works a brush on canvas. It's the sky's the limit.
Well, it's funny because, you know, there's almost as we're talking about it now, it sounds materialistic and rational now to me to say to interact with this stuff is to interact in an altered state, because, I mean, essentially what we're saying is, especially with a ghost, it's clear that it's not physical. So if you interact with any energy that is not physical, that, you know, be it lightning or plasma or anything, being in the vicinity of it can cause you to go haywire, can cause stuff in your brain to go zzz, zzz. So why would it not be with non-physical beings or non-physical intelligences, where it just naturally to be in their presence is to be sort of enfolded into this, this other sense of reality. And then they are too.
Right.
You know?
Right. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Even people who claim to have some type of extrasensory perception to be able to perceive ghosts, I very rarely hear someone say, I'm looking right at him right now. You can't see that person, but I can see that person. Even psychics that, you know, I mean, George Hansen would probably use a psychic that is very good, very tested. And I would hazard a guess that this is not how it works for them. They see this person in some kind of mind's eye, or they see this person, or they hear this person in some kind of version of their own voice, or voice of their own consciousness, talking. And again, I'm not these people. And does it take somebody like your sister or my wife to have an ability like that, to be able to go, yeah, I'm fine with this, because what else am I going to do? It's there. I can't go, you're not there. I got my life to live. So yeah, I'll talk to this spirit and find out what it wants, and maybe it'll leave me alone. Maybe that's it. I would have a very hard time as me saying, I'm okay with this in a normal, rational, you know, the me that's talking now state of mind, you know? And people are saying probably to themselves, well, how the black shrouded guy, how the aliens back in the old days, you know, of, you know, these, not discussions by any stretch, but I say something, it says something back, and I say something again, and then I don't remember anymore. How does that work? Well, again, there's an altered state going on there, of one kind or another. Or you don't even realize it. And this is something that you brought up a few minutes ago, Jerry, where you're saying where it's clearly a ghost, Well, there are plenty of accounts that say they don't always look like transparent, you know, guy with a sheet, or transparent soldier, or transparent woman, or what have you. There are times where people report they looked as real as me. They looked as real as anybody out here. I had no idea what I was talking to. I had no idea that Large Marge wasn't a truck driver, right? So I think the first time I ever saw what everybody said was a ghost, it looked very much like a guy. I mean, I can picture it in my head perfectly. And the guy was not normal at all. I mean, but to look at him standing against the fence post looked like anybody else standing against the fence post. Solid. It wasn't until it started to move that something didn't feel right and something didn't look right. And that was really the defining moment of me going, something's not right here. What's going on? So I can see it if you don't know what you're looking at. If it can be that chameleon-like to be able to take on the appearance of solidity, of grounded in this is reality, here we are, here's this man. Well, guess what? This man is not a man. This is an avatar that you're seeing that's not really there. And guess what? If your best friend were on top of the hill, he would see you looking at this thing and wouldn't see the thing you were looking at. He would just see you looking, going, what is he looking at? That's hard to get your head around. That's hard for anybody to swallow. So I think we got to be careful when we say it doesn't present that way either to certain people or present that way in its ultimate manifestation. There's so many variables in there that we can't leave those out. I would have a hard time, as me right now, in this frame of mind, to have a discussion with something that I know is either not human or not alive, in the sense that we know alive. That would be hard. I don't know. Are people like Lane Crosby, who claim to have discussions with dead people, is this what it is? I mean, is that what that is? Is it so, again, does it mimic the EVP? Does it mimic the K2 meter? Is it so on the periphery that it's a good arm's distance away? You can couch it how you like. You can accept it or reject it. You know what I mean? Like it exists in that place where it's not jumping up in my face. It's very much, I have to talk to it in order for me to have any kind of dialogue at all. So I'm in control of this, whereas the vast majority of my experiences with this stuff have not been, I've been not in control in any way, shape, or form.
Well, let's add another bit to this. Another way to tell that this is altered state stuff, and perhaps an answer to why it is that you have a different experience and I have a different experience than, say, Elaine Crosby or somebody like that, which is, well, it's easy to see with psychic mediums. They don't ask deep questions. If you've ever interviewed a medium and asked them, hey, why haven't you asked, or have you ever asked this? It's never dawned on them. And then what they tell you is like the nonsense about moving them to the light. Oh, I tell the dead person to go to heaven because they're confused. They don't know where they are.
Right.
And this sounds good. I just interviewed a woman who claims to have, sort of almost like secret school experiences. Like she has visitor phenomena that she believes is teaching her something, teaching her how to move between worlds, this sort of thing. But the more you probe it with like, okay, so how? And when do you know?
It's very hollow.
Yeah. When do you know that you've graduated? Like, where are you in this schooling with this stuff? And like a lot of the stuff that she puts out there are things that I've experienced as visionary phenomena through, my spiritual shenanigans. She believes they're beings. Like if I have, or even if I have like a flashing visualizations of faces in my mind's eye kind of thing, she might look at that and say she's being visited by people. I would look at that and say that is some sort of random thing out of the human collective, some sort of imagination that is beyond my personal, but just interference of some sort. So there's this sense of like, if you interact with this stuff for too long and need to contextualize it, then you end up with this absurdly simplistic happy answer, and you're the center of it. You're the one who's in the school, or you're the one who's the medium who's helping people get to the other side, like the chicken crossing the road. But if you remain open to it and you go, I'm still not sure, I have deeper questions about this than that surface level, then isn't that what actually keeps this thing haywire in your life? Because you're keeping the anti-structure at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's no way to escape the conversation that you have to have when you have this conversation, which is to say that everybody's going to compartmentalize this in different ways. Forget the perceptual end of it. Forget that, if you put an alien being on a stage in front of 100 people, there would be a large amount of people that wouldn't see anything. That's just, to me, that's an obvious notion considering the perceptual angle of all this. But that aside, people are going to try and compartmentalize an experience to integrate it into their life, because you can't have this crap hanging off your neck the rest of your life. You can't walk around, because then you know who you end up being? Me and Jeremy. That's who you end up being.
Nobody wants that, especially us.
Nobody wants to be us, because who wants to stand around asking dumb questions all day about stuff that doesn't matter? By and large, this doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of life, asking these questions is very important to you and I and other bunch of other people. But when it really comes down to it, it's not paying the bills. It's not. It just doesn't. This doesn't integrate in a useful way. Whitley said he was the purveyor of useless knowledge. And I realized he was really down in the dumps when he said this during the interview with us. But I think it's a good way to kind of look at this. People are going to compartmentalize in order for a way for it to have meaning for them, in order for them to be able to articulate it to other people. But we have much different perceptions of things than do Kim Carlsberg or this woman you're talking about. Right. Versus you and I.
Well, but Kim Carlsberg is someone I would say had a bunch of bad dreams. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference. Like, I listen to this woman, and on the one hand, I don't necessarily trust her interpretation of the things that she say are going on, but I believe they're going on because, one, I've experienced them, I've just contextualized them differently, and two, they sound like things that you've experienced, and I go, okay. So it gives me pause to not dismiss it. But I look at these things and I go, when I hear people saying they're being taught something, they're getting something out of this, and then to question or like, the medium, I'm moving them on, and then to question them about it, it's like it's so self-evident to them that they never questioned it themselves. Like, well, what are you actually learning then? You're swirling light. You're saying that you're swirling light around in the air with your finger. And this being is telling you that what you're doing is, that this is the future. What you're doing is accessing the future. Now, okay, if I take that at face value, now I understand the swirling the light thing, believe it or not. This is something that this woman said on the show. Because that's something I do in this meditative state sometimes. But there is nobody in my ear saying what I'm doing. And if they did say that, if they did say what you're doing is playing with the future, that is so open to interpretation that I wouldn't even know what to do with that saying, but she knows how to contextualize it and it makes sense to her. But really, what are you doing? You're swirling a color in the air, and it's a color that no one else would see if they were in the room with you. So really what you're doing is the equivalent of nothing. Again, in the larger sense. A purveyor
of useless knowledge.
But you are doing something because you're in an altered state. So in that altered state, there is this color and you can interact with it, or whatever that is. But that is an altered state. And it's almost like the thinking about it in that altered state doesn't translate to reality. So if you're thinking about it as like, oh, I'm being taught something, this is about the density of whatever. Well, that's great in that state. But in this reality, there's nothing, I'm sure McKenna had to have said something about this, the ability to bring it back. Like you can, not only can you not bring back a physical thing, I'm not so sure you can bring back a lesson that is coherent here. But because it's so coherent there, and it feels like it's so coherent there, that to ask the question, what are you talking about, is like hugely insulting because they haven't thought about it that way, because they're so used to being in that altered state playing with this crap, and it's so meaningful there.
And I think you can't really, motive also has to come into play with this. She could have had that experience without question, and she can compartmentalize it or transpose that into her life any way she likes. She didn't have to go on a show with you for that. So you also have to think about what's the motive for this. I mean, and that goes from, oh my God, the T-shirt selling ghost hunters to the endless lectures and books of Richard Dolan to Nick Pope to, I mean, on and on. It just goes on and on. What are the motives of these people? What is the ultimate motive? And I think the motive for a lot of people is either attention, some kind of reach for fame, even if it's in this extremely niche thing. This extremely niche thing can, after all, net one a network program on television, which leads to all sorts of other fringe things that are exciting. Do we not realize at this point that people like Dustin Perry, who was on Ghost Hunters, is still doing lectures and personal appearances for money? Yeah, I mean, that's still going on. And how long has it been since he was a regular on that show? It's like being in Star Wars. You know, once you're in, you can tour it for the rest of your life, apparently. So motive has to be a question that you ask. Why is this person talking about this, and why do we hear things like I moved this being on to the, I mean, the idea of moving beings onto the light, that always irked me, because I thought to myself, well, they're there, you're not. You know, well, they can't get through.
Didn't
but
they
I can
see
help
Poltergeist before they died? Come on.
Right. I mean, it's just, it's an absurdity to me that a person on our side of the curtain can open a door on their side and force them or ask them to go through it, and they're helping. Like, what did you really do? I mean, is this more along the lines of less about magical openings of portals and more about the psychology of dead people? Like, no, the portal is always there. They just have to realize where they are, and that this is what, if that's the case, I can understand that. But please don't tell me you're opening a portal to the next world from here.
Well, but
don't tell me that.
Yeah, but well,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
In defense of this woman, I know she's not lecturing or making money or writing books or any of that. So whatever she's getting out of it, it's not that. But I did a little research because you know, we charge money for this show, and people demand that we do research, Jeff. So right before this show, I went to Wiki. Okay. That was the extent of my research. Thank you. And looked up hallucinations, shared hallucinations. And, you know, I didn't really see anything about, like, the drug experience, whether two people have a shared hallucination from a drug experience. What does that mean? But generally, the way the definitions go from the DSM and so forth, the whatever the hell that stands for, you know, psychological manual of whatever, it has to do with, like, people having a shared belief about something that is outside the societal or the subculture or the cultural norm. I think they even said subcultural. But usually people who have hallucinations or shared hallucinations are isolated from society, you know, loner types. Mm-hmm. It's like you're indoctrinated into a belief system of some sort, and then you have this shared hallucination based on the power of suggestion, you know, kind of thing. And I almost wonder, you know, are there some experiencers now who, you know, they have an experience or a series of them, and then they talk about it and they get ridiculed. So they keep to themselves and they say, I don't want to deal with the outside world. Those people don't get it. This is real. And so they become isolated. And in that isolation, do they start hallucinating stuff on top of sort of the reality of it? And does it get muddled that way? And then when you start believing something about it, like I'm the center of this, I am in school, I'm a pupil, or whatever it is, then do you start hallucinating it that way, where everything is a lesson, nothing is just sort of a vague, general, you know, every bump in the night is something, you know, is meaningful. Every dream you have is meaningful.
Yeah.
Every, you know, brain fart is a lesson.
The world becomes full of magic.
The world becomes full of magic that is directed at you.
At you, yes.
And then it becomes, you know, then there's the thing where it's your job to say, well, I'm not special in all of this, but you've set it up that you are special in all of this.
Right.
And
right,
so to question it is like, seems like so out of left field, because you thought that you were doing the depth of this. You thought you were in the depths. You thought you were asking those big questions, but really they were just completely shallow. It was just giving in to this illusion that you made about it. And it becomes a self-fortifying illusion because you're not talking to the outside world. Now you're just talking to people who believe you. You know? And then they just go, oh my God, that's fascinating. Yeah, that happened to me too. Oh yeah, I believe that. And it just becomes this snowball effect where it creates like sort of a group,
a circle jerk
of group hallucinations. And I wonder, you know, if we were to go back, we did during the Paratopia 1.0 years, talk to Brandon D about, he had mentioned having a shared hallucination. I think he was on ayahuasca. I could be wrong about that, but under some sort of psychotropic influence with friends out in the jungle, and they had a shared hallucination. And the thing that I don't think either of us thought to ask was, well, did somebody see it first and then say it, and then everybody saw it after that, or did everyone see it at once?
I think if you go back and listen to that, I think that the girl had gone in and brought him out, if I'm remembering this right. And she said, "Do you see it?" And he related what he saw, and that was what everybody else saw. But what I found to be the most interesting is that's even what the blind guy of the group saw. I mean, I found that to be really interesting. And that makes you think, like, then there's something there, and then in this altered state they're seeing it. But in this altered state, are they super hyped up to the power of suggestion, and suggestions themselves become visual, you know, in that psychedelic state? Sounds that you hear become visual. Yeah.
So is it the same thing here? Is it another version of that, where you become this isolated person, not unlike a monk, not unlike a monk in the hills, isolating himself in a cave, and, you know, sensory deprivation, or just even nurturing other human being without the physical contact or the stimulation of other people? Do you become, you know, sort of a hallucination factory? And then if other people are so tapped, do they see it too and go, yeah, I see that? And they're not wrong, they're not lying, but it's also not representing a reality outside of their own heads.
But it's getting them as far as they can to recognize and contextualize it. I mean, that's what I think people like that give to this is, no, they're not right, not in the true sense. They're not really looking deeper than what is being presented to them. And then they're interpreting it in the way that we would all interpret anything. But they interpret meaning. There's the manifestation, then there's meaning to this, rather than just saying, you know, the one side of the spectrum is, well, it's just one of those things, which I think is a lot of people. And then there's people who go, well, now wait a minute, what the hell was that? That's, I think, where we fall into. And then there are people who go, yeah, that was Arcturans from, you know, planet B2 in the nebula system. I mean, you know, these are people who, I mean, effectually, I think it's some kind of cultural contamination to a certain degree. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Arcturians and Pleiadians and all of this other just nonsense. These are terms for people's experiences that they can't put into a box, but they latch onto something that seems to have that faux missing puzzle piece that completes their picture. And so they latch onto that, and they hold onto that, by the way, like grim death, because that then explains and gives meaning to the meaningless of their experience in order to not make it be, well, it's just one of those things. Or what the hell is that? It's neither. It's, I know what this is. I've got answers here. That's what I'm after.
Right. But the ironic thing,
the same way as, you know,
the ironic thing about that is they're keeping themselves from the deeper meaning, because when everything when everything has the same level of meaning, there is no meaning. If you have nothing, if you have all the same paint on the canvas, then you have not painted anything. You've painted one color. So how can you determine a picture from the one color? And so this gets back to, is that why this stuff becomes the crazy points on the graphic equalizer instead of everything set at 0 for you and me and whoever else who keeps these answers away, asks the questions and then doesn't answer them, you know.
I mean, I would like to have some kind of answer, even if it's just part of the answer. That would be nice.
But I would say that you would have the ability to tell meaning from non-meaning. Like, there are certain things, like with this meditation energy thing, right, where the movements are clearly something I don't get that seem to do with, like, magic or ritual or something beyond just, like, your body's natural language. It's not yoga, it's not Tai Chi. But if I saw everything that way, I wouldn't be able to differentiate, so it would all be meaningless. So how are you going to ever tell? So I think that you can find, even if you don't know what it is, you can find meaning in these things, or levels of meaning, simply by not looking at every dream or every visualization that comes through your mind's eye as a point of contact, or a point of lesson from a sentient being.
Yeah. And I think that, and it just occurred to me, so maybe this is off the thread a little bit, but, you know, after I've given a talk somewhere or I've talked to a group of people somewhere, people will, like, invariably, the question will come up, something not along the lines of, you know, how do you get up and go to work every day? Because I've answered that a billion times, but it's more along the lines of, so what have you arrived at, or you know, like, people expect you to have some kind of way to frame it. And I said, well, I don't have a way of framing it because, you know, I'm not willing to accept what it shows me. And then you get that question, well, why not? These are such impactful experiences. Why wouldn't you accept what it presents? And and the only answer that I've ever been able to come up with that to that is, because what it presented was impossible. And so there's got to be something else, because that I don't reject it, but I go, that's just impossible. That couldn't have happened the way I remember it. And so I need to question this. I need to dissect this. And I'm not interested in having an answer just to have an answer. I could have accepted any number of the bat crap crazy theories that have been floated across my nose. I could have latched on to any one of them and probably been blissfully unaware of the gnawing, like a leech in your pants, of what this means to question this stuff over and over and over, to second guess yourself over and over and over. But do you want, I mean, it comes down to the very simple thing I've said a million times. You either care or you don't. You either want to know something or you just want to believe whatever it is that gets you through. And so, not being a guy who wants to believe just to get through, I mean, you got to kind of say, I'm going to ask these questions. And of course, and here's the beautiful bit in this, is that to be that person and to say, I reject what this shows me. I want to see this clearly. I want to know this better. I want to understand this, or at least try my damnedest to understand it. I reject your belief system. I don't want to believe anything, because what you believe doesn't fit to me in any meaningful way at all, other than a psychological one. This is the difference. The psychological difference will be you living with this with some measure of peace in your life. I think to continuously question it gains you the ire of people who have accepted their own peace with it in whatever form that it's taken for them. You will earn their ire for that, because you're basically saying, I don't believe you. There's more to it than that. And they're going to say, well, no, there's not, because, you know, because Fizzy Dibbit from Planet X told me this is what it is. And you can take that crap to the bank. Okay. And you know, our reaction to that is, yeah, okay. I mean, at that point, I think you and I get that look on our face like we've forgotten who our waitress is at that point in the conversation. We're just looking to get, I'm sorry, check. Can we just try to extract ourselves as quickly as possible out of that situation. And I don't think there's any easy way to get out of that. We just, I think reactively, we will brand, well, they're just nuts. No, they're having an experience of some kind, a lot of these people, and they are looking for meaning in it, and they're willing to accept any to escape the gnawing of not knowing. Because it's easier. I mean, face it, it is easier. But I got to feel in my heart of hearts that at some point in the day, you either have to lie to yourself and believe it, and there are people who do that, or you have to say, I know what I say, and it fits perfectly, but I don't know this. And on some level, what I've just seen doesn't fit into that. So I'll reject that. And then you become David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins because they just arbitrarily reject crap that doesn't fit into their little preconceived box. See, then you're making a whole new ideology for yourself. That makes no sense to me. Well, I don't understand why someone would want that.
Here's a question about all that, then. Is the phenomenon actually feeding into that and telling them what they want to hear? I mean, are there visitors or some sort of thing saying, yeah, that's right, we're teachers? Or is it a product of, like, when I hear this from this woman, maybe I should have then asked, well, how did you know that they were teaching you something? Or how do you know that they were there for you and this is a lesson and all that? Did they say it to you? Because I think that a lot of the times the way people speak about this stuff, like, oh yeah, I'm having a lesson. Oh, I'm being taught. Oh, they told me. And then that's the language we use to describe what we're saying is going on. But yet you dig a little deeper and you find out, well, they didn't actually say anything. I just had a feeling. Or like you're saying about mediums, well, it was in my own voice, in my head, but they told me they needed to go to the light. It just happened to sound like me, coincidentally. So, I mean, is this the case? Is it a case of sort of dissociative voices that you're just now at a point where you can't even strip away, like, what is your own internal voice and what is the phenomena? Or is the phenomena actually playing along and saying, yeah, I'll be that for you?
I think it will play along. Yeah, I do. I think that, as I said before, I think this thing will fold into whatever kind of origami swan that you want. It's.
But what would be the point of that for ghosts? See, like with a visitor thing, it's like, okay, so you can think of a million reasons why that would be so with the visitor thing, but with ghosts, there's no movement for you as a psychic medium. Like with her, with if you think that you're in a secret school and you're learning stuff, well, there's movement, and you've got a chance to break through to some understanding, or at least a pseudo understanding. If you're a medium, you think you've got it all figured out, and you're just doing this repetitious thing over and over again. Right.
But I mean, the thing with the psychic medium thing is that it amazes me that all these people they follow the same guidebook. There seems to be like a prerequisite backstory to that. Like, I didn't know I had strange friends as a child, that no one could see. There always seems to be that kind of backstory to that, which leads you into, I talk to dead people. And I'm not saying that that's an impossibility. I don't know. All I'm saying is that when you talk about something like that, I think, well, I'll put it to you this way. The first time you hear someone speaking into your head, isn't that troubling? Does that not trouble anyone? Close your eyes, folks, and try and imagine that the voice in your head, you can't anticipate it. It's not you. It doesn't sound like you. That would be a pretty scary thing all on its own. To these people, this is commonplace, we're told, right? I mean, interestingly enough, it's kind of like the predictions thing. Like, we always hear about the predictions of, a psychic, or for that matter, Billy Meyer. We always hear about their predictions after the events happen. Well, I predicted that, I said the white horse would fall in mud and sea. pig is in mud. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Your donations will be accepted at the door. And it's kind of a switcheroo. I think when you're a psychic and you are helping those move into the light and all of that stuff, I think that's very easy to fool yourself into believing that that's what's going on, especially when you have to do this on demand. I mean, there's a big problem. You're in front of a crowd and somebody says, give me a reading. I mean, you can talk all the cold reading stuff you want. I mean, there's that for sure. But are you, I just think that's a very precarious slope to walk. I'll put it to you this way. I have a lot of respect for Lane Crosby, but I saw that she had given a lecture recently in a town. I don't remember the name. I read the advertisement, and the advertisement, for all intent and purposes, read to me as if she was saying, you've got your history in this town, but the ghosts have told me several things to either she meant to say expand on that history or completely dispute that theory or history. That, to me, that's precarious stuff, man. Like, no, I'm sorry. I don't care how good a psychic someone is. You're not rewriting history books based on your conversations with ghosts.
Jeff, have you ever heard of a man named Seth?
Yes. And I believe we've had that discussion. My God, let's not go down that path again. But, yeah, I think it's very easy to fool yourself and, again, enter into that same old place we've talked about time after time, which is the adults playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're playing a part at that point. And that part can feel every bit as real because it exists on the edge of perception when it's real. How would you tell the difference? What would be the differential in there? And when it doesn't produce on demand, what do you do? When you sold tickets and please. I believe your mind, when robbed of vision and robbed of hearing, it will concoct things. We know this. We know this will happen. You want to hallucinate? Tape ping pong balls over your eyes so that nothing gets in but white. You will see things after a while. I think the same thing can be said of a mind that is looking for something of a voice or a meaning or a drive or purpose. It will find that purpose, whether or not it's of legitimate origin or not, I think can be very hard to tell for some people.
Well, and that question aside, ask yourself this one simple question. Does that voice or do those lessons ever tell you anything useful in life at all? I mean, why has no one ever come back with the schematics for the ship that get you through the wormhole?
Right.
Why have ghosts never answered anything about the afterlife in any coherent, universal way? I'm sure there have been, but I'm sure they've also been in conflict with each other. You know what I would love to see is for a psychic medium to say something, oh yes, so-and-so is here and I'm going to move them to light. And then for another psychic to stand up and go, that's not happening. I also see the same thing and there is no ghost. She's a fraud.
Right.
Or he is a fraud. Right. Does that ever happen? Or do they ever confirm each other? Do two mediums ever go, oh yeah, I see that dude too?
Yes. I've heard tell of mediums in Gettysburg doing exactly that. But it's not double blind. It's not like they go in separately and both come out and write down on a sealed envelope what they saw and how they saw it and what was said and who the person is. And then the other one goes in and does the same thing and it's all very sequestered. I don't think they do that. Because I think that would be the equivalent of, I don't know, operating a Ouija board upside down and blindfolded. It doesn't do anything. I mentioned that on Robert Murch, who is a historian of Ouija and one of the biggest proponents of the Ouija board. He said, how do you think the Ouija board works? And I said, automatism, which is why, it's never produced anything other than gibberish when the person operating it or persons operating it have been blindfolded. That's a fact. No one has ever gleaned anything useful from a Ouija board blindfolded. And if it works, and it's the spirit moving that, the spirit doesn't need to see anything. You're just a tool, right? No, sorry, it doesn't work. So for two psychics to go in and say, do you see the old man in the corner? Yes, I do. What's your name? Bert? That's right, it's Bert. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't... But, there are people who will pay money to see that. And
yeah, I would pay money to get any sort of information that I couldn't know. It doesn't even have to be intellectual. It can, because some of this stuff is about personal change, coming from the heart, or any of that sort of thing. With these abductions, or even, I'm sure, with the mediumship type thing, psychic phenomena. Mm-hmm. But is there ever anything said that you couldn't know? Is there anything that is deeper, richer, more alive than anything that you've ever read? No, not that I've seen. So then what's the point of another intelligence speaking at all, if they are? And why are the people who are the instruments of this not asking these questions? Really, that's more paranormal to me than anything, is how could you be a psychically gifted person speaking to the dead, and it never dawns on you in your entire adult life to ask them about life, the universe, and everything in depth, and yet you're likely the same type of person who would read about secret societies and mysticism and things about depth, but never ask the very thing that you have the gift for. That just boggles my mind. But then again, I'm speaking to Jeff Ritzman, who had a sit-down chat with a shrouded being, and he did tell you things that were of depth, but did you ask them, or did he just offer them?
No, he totally just threw them out. Yeah.
Did it even dawn on you to ask? To engage on that level? How about that? I mean, were you in your right mind to even be thinking like that? Oh my God, I've got the sit-down chat. Now let's ask him about, whatever.
Yeah, I definitely recognized the value in what was going on, yes. But that said, was I in an altered state? I feel certain that I was. And I think I was in an altered state after it was over, too. I think you can attest to that.
Yeah.
And this is not a drug-induced altered state, just for the sake of argument, for those who have never heard before. Yeah, I mean, that precipitated the visions of mathematical things and numbers and strange symbols of one kind or another, kind of flooding around. Not only visually, I could see them visually layered over top of normal vision, but also seem to be going into the mind's eye as well at the same time. Really weird stuff. And I said, no, I'm not going to understand that. That means nothing to me. But that was in response to a question. I said, I think he said something along the lines of, you have questions. And I said, yeah, only about 1 billion. What is this all about? What is this all about? And that's when that started to flood in. And I'm like, no, I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me. I do art. You got to give me something else. And then that's when I saw, planets and zooming out of the globe and into space and seeing planets and stars and all matter of strange stuff floating around. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, the cosmos itself, and him saying, the Earth and the moon and all the planets and the stars and all, all that. And I was like, yeah, sure, I get all that. I understand that. And I'm thinking there's going to be a step after this that's going to take me to the next level of understanding. What is that all about? Why that? Like I asked you one time, why are galaxies that we can't get to, why are they so beautiful? Why is a nebula in perfect color coordination, right? And he said, he said, you know all those things. Yes, I see the moon and the stars and the earth. And he's like, you think any of that's real? I was like, okay, well, that's not what I wanted to hear. Because that's just a whole nother flood of questions. I think, again, you have to take it with a grain of salt because you have to consider where it's coming from. And anything that this phenomenon has ever shown me or spoken to me has been either cryptic gibberish or misleading. I think not deliberately misleading, but could be taken in any number of ways, I guess is the best way to put it. Just a kind of an open-ended answer, but not really an answer. It's always the way it is. An answer that I could have made on my own. I could have made something to fit that and accepted that as what they were saying, which I think is where this woman comes from in that. But, the very idea that this guy tells me that Horton Hears a Who is real, for lack of a better way to put it, that's not something I was ever really thinking about. And not something that I know that I believe. Again, from the time that you and I first presented that to listeners, I said, take this with a grain of salt. This demands extreme caution and skepticism and questioning, because we have to consider where this comes from. I guess I could have accepted that and written my book and been over in England with Dolan right now giving a lecture about it. But, I'm sorry, I'm not so sure that that's right. Although, in coming years and months, every once in a while we would see an article in a scientific journal talking about just that. Micro cosmic intelligence and how some, the SETI, what are the micro, something about micro SETI, that there are people looking for signals in particles. And what does that tell you?
It tells me they're Paratopia fans.
Well, I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, again, you have to take all this with a huge grain of skepticism and questioning. And
well, what was your feeling on it when he said, do you think that this is all real? I mean, could you have said to him, yeah, isn't it? What do you mean?
Well, to me, and I think I've said this to you before, I have to exist in this reality or whatever we want to call it, but do I buy it hook, line, and sinker? No, I don't really know. I mean, I have to play by the rules, but, it's not like I'm going to freak out one day and, drive a car off a cliff thinking I can fly.
Well, but could you have asked that question, or was your feeling that you understood the answer?
It just kind of, when it said, what do you think that's real? My ultimate answer was, aha, so it's not. I was right, which, again, that's not an answer to me. Was that feeding into what I already I was predisposed to thinking, and that was some kind of confirmation of my unproven, unsubstantiated thoughts about that, or not? I don't know. How do you take that? I mean, I've always said, I think reality is the wool that's pulled over our eyes, and I think the very fact that that just about every person I've ever talked to about a paranormal experience, whether it be some kind of real close encounter with a full apparition ghost or moreover, contact with beings that are not human, whether they be connected to the UFO phenomena or not, they can be or not be, has said the same thing, which is it was more real than real. And I think there's a huge clue in that either this is shaking us out of some kind of self-imposed, self-induced hypnotic trance that we recognize as reality, or the brain dampening out things that we can't as of yet handle mentally. And that just says to me that there's so much more to what we're not seeing than we can possibly shake a stick at. Like, so I buy this reality as this is real. I have to live in this. But is this all there is? Is there not things going on under the veil of the real? I believe that wholeheartedly that there is. But that's, as of right now, only my belief.
Well, see, even that thinking of life is an illusion, when we say it's another thing that like people say, and it may be true, but it has no practical value, and they never think about that part of it. They just sort of say it and feel relieved that they know something about reality. But it's like, if you, if you say, yeah, this is an illusion. Well, yeah, to a ghost, this is not physical. They can move through it, or,
right.
like a wind. But that doesn't make it any less physicality to you or I, who are physical beings. So,
right.
What good does, like, I don't know. It just seems like...
well, it comes down to the same old question. Does the ghost know it's a ghost?
Well, no. I guess what I'm saying is this. It's like people say it as though because they can vocalize it, now they've got the same, the magical ability to move through objects. And they don't. But they talk about it with that same sort of sense. Like everything's...
Yeah.
That wall isn't there. And it's like, well, what does that mean to you? Because to you, the wall is there. So... walk through it if it's not. Show me that it's not there. Of course it's there. It's not there to something in another dimension that doesn't acknowledge the wall, but then same thing, them, us. But they've got their own physicality to deal with.
Right.
I'm sure a ghost does too.
I think it goes into the Matrix type mentality, whereas if you know that the reality is some kind of elaborate illusion, that you have a way to escape it. And I don't necessarily believe that there's a way to escape this.
Yeah, but they speak about it as though knowing it has already made them escape it. Like they're already out. Made them
turn the key on the lock. Yes. Right. We're out. No. No, I think, and again, this is where skeptics get an easy pass on addressing any of this. Is, I think the keys to escaping this are, big surprise, certain psychotropic compounds dialed in correctly. I think, yes, you can have shared experiences, but I think that's depending on dose, weight, tolerance, all of these variables. This is why it's so hard and so rare sometimes to get that shared experience, because everybody, I think, has to be kind of dosed on a kind of like tuning a radio frequency. And so how different is that from the paranormal experience? If you and I are dialed in at a bus stop in Baltimore and we see the same green light, by God, we're seeing the same thing. But if we're not, what do we see differently? How do we see differently? All of these things. I think it's a process of being tuned in at the right time in the right place. This is why these things are rare. Doesn't anybody recognize this? This is why it's a rare phenomena. Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to. It always tickles me that, and I don't know that this has ever happened either. Has a psychic ever gone with a ghost hunting crew and said, there's a ghost standing right over there, I'm looking right at her? And they shoot the picture or they shoot the film, the multi, spectrum film and video and EV, and get anything akin to what the psychic claims to be perceiving? Do we ever get anything, even a hint? I would take as something. But as far as I know, that's never happened. If it has, and you know about it, write and tell me. But I don't know that that's ever really happened. And that's not to say we can dismiss the experience. It's just, what can we expect? I guess is the question you have to ask. What can we expect from all of these messages and appearances? And none of it, as far as I know, none of it has given us the keys to rattle that lock, as Dave Gilmore would say. None of us has given it. It's not given us the keys for that. So as of right now, I think it's fairly useless, other than saying, as you said, Jeremy, and this was a big deal to me, to say there is far more to life than we've been led to believe. Yeah, that was a big deal to me. Was that the end of the story for me? No. That was the beginning of the story.
How different?
I don't know that any.
How different would all of this be if just the one simple thing: don't accept the answers that you are given or think you are being given. If there's no depth to them, and it's that simple, right? Like if you, what happens when the teacher comes and is like, "Okay, you ready for your lesson? I'm going to put you in an altered state, and you're going to swirl this imaginary light with your finger." And then I'm going to tell you that that's the future, that what you're doing is playing with the future right now. If you can agree to look up at any point during that experience and go, you know what? I don't think that I'm doing anything. I don't think that this is anything useful.
Yeah.
How different would it be? Or afterwards? You know, if it's impossible to do during the experience, how about just in pondering it afterwards? To not get wrapped up in the, I'm actually doing something. Would the phenomenon have to respect that? Respond to it in some way?
I don't know. You would think it's so responsive to so many other things, you would think that it would. But if there is a barometer of any kind to this, and I don't know that there is, but if there is, I think you could pretty much layer level on the people who would talk to you about what it's done for them personally that would have no meaning for you. I mean, one of the big things that I got was, you know, from the black shrouded thing was, you know, one question it asked me was, you know, why do you get so irritated at your son? And I offered up every excuse for he doesn't listen to, you know, he's not doing his homework to, you know, every other thing that a kid does that's just being a kid. That's just, you know, part of being a child or part of being a young adult. And it refused every answer that I gave it until I gave it the one that I didn't want to admit to even me, which was that I was ultimately jealous of his youth, that I wished I had his age and his, you know, his body and his opportunity, knowing what I know now. And so that does, I think, eat at a lot of us in different ways, but not the way that it would eat at me as a person personally. So how does one really relate that experience and make it have meaning for somebody to understand it when it has absolutely nothing to do with them?
Well, people can relate to that. I'm sure a good number of people can relate to that.
I think they can, but I don't think it would hold the same weight of realization for them that it did for me in that moment. I don't think that's an easy thing for coffee mugs and T-shirts. You know?
Alien psychologists. Yeah, I mean, but this is the problem. It's a personal thing. But this was the biggest revelation for me of the big sort of quote-unquote enlightenment I am experience. The biggest revelation of that, well, of course, the going through it is a huge revelation, but the aftermath of it in knowing that you can explain this until you're blue in the face, but it's up to the person to have the experience or not. There is no explanation. All these guru books, all of these religious texts, all these spiritual, you know, Eckhart Tolle and on down are completely useless because that just becomes another illusion for you to latch onto and desire. And the goal, if the goal is the dissolution of your own sense of self, for the brain to relax and go, you know what, I'm not going to project Jeremy today because I see that I'm not going to find what I seek with him.
Right.
I'm just going to shut up. That's what it takes. And everybody that has to have that quote unquote come to Jesus moment themselves. There is no text that can give it to you. Therefore, there is no point in bringing this message back to the tribe in terms of trying to get the tribe enlightened or get them to that point to go, do you see what I see? And it's the same thing with this. There is no universal, hey, look at this. It is always peripheral or personal or, you know. Yeah.
Subjective, completely.
Subjective, but not real. But real, you know?
But exactly, yes.
That is the huge revelation of all this. And so when you hear people who are like, oh, I've got this answer, or, oh, I've got a lesson here, and they don't, and it does not compute when you're confused as to why they think that is an important thing to tell the public about.
Right. What is the lesson again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Eat more fruit? Is that what they were saying? I don't know.
So I wonder if with this phenomena, I mean, does it run along the same lines as the big spiritual epiphany, which is it can't be something that you give to someone. It can't work that way. It is all about the journey of the person or something, the personal experience of it that can't be in any way given. And yet at the same time, the echo chamber of it, right? The dangling carrot can somehow be translated or transmitted to a person, I think. right? Just in even talking about it, or like you said, you could bring something home with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that doing this show or having these kind of discussions is fruitless, because the people listening to them have already made up their minds. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's valuable because we've gotten emails from people, which I think are great, where they go, until you said this, that never crossed my mind. And so this free exchange of ideas has done wonders for me, and kind of, actually helping them to integrate some kind of experience into something that they can at least go, okay, now I know the way to attack this with questions.
Yeah, but see, that's even personal. Like, I'm not saying, I see the value in this show, and I see the value even in having written urgency about the big spiritual thing. My point is that there is nothing that's going to bring you to the door of the being.
There's no roadmap. No. No.
There's no so in that sense, the question is, can it exist objectively in any way, or can it only exist in this subjective thing? Is it the same thing as the spiritual in that sense? Because what is that, and then I guess maybe a tangential question to that is when we say that it's an altered state, well, what's being altered? Is it the sense of self? And so, isn't that similar to the death of self? The alteration of the self. I mean, if the self is altered, then is the self the self?
Yeah, I'm like the Simpsons dog at this point.
If you alter who Jeff Ritzmann is he Jeff Ritzmann anymore? In that state?
Well, of course not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're going to be able to determine that. What is being altered? I think.
Sure, we can. We got like 20 minutes.
I think it's going to be hard to say, is there an objective point in all of this that it's giving us, other than, again, that, the things that we kind of already know to a large degree anyway, that, our perceptions are malleable, that there's more than what we can see, hear, taste, touch, and feel. That there is this something real and not real. There is something, and it's intimately connected with us. And I think you can get those kind of bit slices out of it, and they are the most minute bits of the bigger thing. But I think, I mean, again, it comes down to if I always love it when people say, "Well, aliens are here to help us." But then they don't really say anything that gives any help. I mean, this has been a thing that you've said over and over tonight about if they've given us anything, like what, say something that means something, right? I think that the message is more about that it manifests in your life, that it reacts in your life, that than anything that has ever been said by anybody that these things have related to them. I think the very fact that it is, that it can be seen by more than one person in an objective sense, it can be perceived independently and accurately by that other person. I think that is the message. I think that there is symbolic meaning in this stuff, although that's always going to be up for grabs. But is there an objective? Is there an altogether encompassing? Oh God, I don't even know how you would even. I don't even know how you'd approach that to say what is the objective thing going on here. What is this trying to convey? I think that would be a really tough question to get at this point in history.
Well, where are you personally with this? Do you believe that these are that these phenomena represent beings? Or do you think that reality itself is puppeteering this? Or something else?
How to do in 60 words or less.
Well, is it a civilization?
No. Is it another culture interacting with us? Not in the way that we think of a culture.
I mean, when people say alien, they sort of stopped saying that and just replaced interdimensional, but they still mean alien, just from next door.
Right.
Is that where you are, or do you look at that and go,
no.
Well, that's just switching the mask? But it's
switching the mask is a good way to look at it. No, I think that this is some very weird, twisted amalgamation of several things that, I always look at it as like 50 concentric circle wheels with one single line on them, and they're all rotating in different directions at different speeds. But at some point in time, all those lines are going to line up. I think that there are reasons behind some of the answers that we got in Project Core, even though I don't think we can prove them or recognize them as a complete and total consistency. But I think that there are
Rh negative blood is aliens. It's aliens,
right?
Oh no,
yeah, yeah, not so much. I think to our side of things, I think that imagination and art and drive and desire to create, to write, to paint, to draw, to create, to bring the internal to the external is a huge part of this. And so that part, I think, lays on us. But I think by the same token that there is some other something that recognizes that or sees something and reaches out at the same time to connect with that, because it's formlessness and it wants form, or it wants to be perceived because it's imperceptible to everything else. And so it goes, oh, look, I can get through there. Boom, and it sticks its head out for one brief panting moment. And there you have something, whatever it is. You can't believe what it presents, because what it presents to you is kind of like something out of The Mask. It's like, look at me, it just makes no logical sense whatsoever. It's an impossibility, but it's so there, and it's so in that person's moment that it's undeniable to them. So they seek meaning in that. But I think that we author reality. I think reality is a product of some amount of randomness, I think, is there. But I think by and large, I think that, if you could tell everybody starting tomorrow to just write a beautiful story and have everybody really do it, from, I'm talking about everybody from the most horrible people in the world to the most gracious and lovely people in the world, to sit down and write a beautiful, non-threatening, peaceful, all-around poem, painting, whatever. I think this world will be fundamentally changed by that. But of course, that will never, ever happen.
No, instead, what we get are now people getting really angry and hostile and biting each other and then dying mysteriously. Not unlike The Living Dead, which is what we've been concentrating on in culture.
Yeah, I mean, there's a perfect example of that, I mean, the thing is that you see these bizarre conspiracy theories about, look at the thing about the Batman movie where for weeks it was all over the internet that in the Batman movie there was a precursor. Remember, from the man who went in and shot people up in the theater at the Batman movie. Well, during that movie, they show a map, and the only thing that's visible on that map says Sandy Hook. Now, people go, that's a warning. That's a conspiracy. It's all a setup.
Who warned us? A gaffer?
Right, exactly. Right?
Why would you want to warn anyone about your conspiracy? That seems to kind of defeats the purpose.
Exactly. So, I mean, what does that say, though? I mean, how weird that this works. You can't anticipate it, but yet the hallmarks are everywhere. And anybody looking at that movie wouldn't have gone, oh, my God, something's going to happen in a place called Sandy Hook. I mean, no. But did reality meld itself from that event in that movie at that point with that alignment to make something happen over here with another man whose clocks were starting to tick the right way, and this happens and unfolds in the way it does? I don't know. I find that to be a fascinating thought. I don't know that I believe it. But I do think that we create reality as we write and create art and theater and cinema and, all of this. I think would they have come up with a hoverboard, being as today is, we're recording this on Back to the Future Day, right? So hoverboards, everybody's talked about hoverboards today. We actually have these, right? They're prototyped right now. They demand a huge amount of magnetic, diffusion, along with super cold temperatures and all this. But we're doing this. But nobody's going to kid themselves and say that this was anything more than an inspiration from a movie that made somebody think about how can we actually make this real. Do I have any doubt that one day we're going to have real lightsabers? Yes, one day we will have real lightsabers. I totally know this will happen because we're inspired. We want those things.
Keep dreaming.
Is it ever going to be? Is it? They will make them. It will happen. I only need point to the pad from Star Trek from years ago. We have them now. You know, these things will happen. Will they ever be a viable tool for combat? No. You know, they'll happen, but they'll happen in inspiration from. But we're talking about something else. We're talking about reality reacting in very real ways to art. That's something a lot different. And maybe that's a future show where we have Dr. Jeff Kripal on to talk about how he sees that and how that works, for him. But until then, I'll only say read his 2 books, Authors of the Impossible and Mutants and Mystics. Both of those are really great books for trying to get your head around that a little bit. But overall, it's about the internal externalizing. But that's only on our side, from my point of view.
Everything is the internal externalizing. I mean, that is what inventions are. That's what art is. That's what everything is.
That is what art is. Yes.
That's what the Big Bang Theory is.
Yes.
In its own way.
I mean, and these things we discard,
Maybe this would be good to speak to Jeff Kripal about. I'm sure he's hip to the trickster theory. Does the trickster theory work for the normal as well as the paranormal?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, specifically, I'm thinking, like, is NASA going crazy? Are scientists becoming enamored with their own nonsense and saying wrong things constantly now? But even when you're talking about, like the Batman thing, like putting Sandy Hook on the map, I mean, is that a trickster element in a normal thing? Does it happen to conspiracy theorists outside of the paranormal realm? Do they become... engage the dangling carrot and an anti-structural moment have their own set of weirdness that isn't paranormal, but, is paranormal to the extent that it's synchronistic, maybe.
Well, exactly, yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think you certainly can't get a whole lot more anti-structural than science when you're talking about, these folks staying up, 24 hours straight to work on one thing that they just can't let go. That they become obsessed with it. So I don't know. I mean, it's that's probably something Tyler might be able to talk about as well. But I mean, certainly the war on science as of late is a product of something else entirely. So
I just feel like NASA, we keep hearing, life is everywhere. They keep seeing life everywhere, and yet have not presented a shred of evidence that there's life anywhere. And I find that amusing. And, part of that might be a budgeting concern. Maybe they laughed at the notion of the very thing that they were looking for, life out there, through the 80s and 90s, because that was the sort of public consensus, and that's how they could get their budgeting. But now it's like, no, the tide has turned, and people really want them to find what they say they're looking for. So now they're claiming to find it everywhere, and so that's how they get their budget to go look. I don't know, but I just want to mention this, and this has really nothing to do with anything we've talked about today, but it just keeps irking me, and so I've got to get it off my chest, Jeff.
Okay.
Watching, they found that a mega structure that may or may not be of intelligent design, way out in space, and so now SETI is going to point its radio telescopes at it and try to hear for something.
Right.
And I find the setup odd, because the other options are, instead of it being a Death Star of some sort, that maybe it's asteroids in an asteroid belt. Like, these are things that, NASA would have gone with first, a number of years ago. Now the lead is that it could be aliens. I just find that, like, when did they switch to leading with aliens? I don't know. It's weird, but
I think that the operative thing that you read in that story is that they're thinking that it's artificial because it seems to be mathematically ordered. And my question would be, how mathematically ordered is it? I mean, I don't know anything about mathematical order other than mathematical order sounds like, there's a pattern to this that is uninterrupted and meaningful in some kind of way that is not random. I don't know how you differentiate that, but okay. But yeah, I don't know why that was the first thing they went to either. I don't, unless they are actually seeing something that looks like, I don't know, rebar or, I mean, right. What are you seeing out there that's encircling this planet that's causing you to say, we think this could be a megastructure?
But then
like
see
why or something.
The thing that's bothering me is, like, why are they not satisfied with even just that? Then you've got to see Michio Kaku on TV talking about the possibility of what these alien civilizations are like. And that's right. The part that bothers me. That's the thing that they can't know. And not only can he not know it, but the example that he said two things that I heard. One that I think is true and is something that we should all think about, which is the newscaster was saying, well, why don't they reach out and contact us then if they are there? And he was saying, well, if they're, he's already got it all mapped out. Well, if this really is artificial, then it's a type whatever civilization, and they're only about 1,000 years ahead of us. But so if they're 1,000 years ahead of us, then we would have nothing to offer them. What could we offer them? And I think this is a great question. That's right. I never thought about that, but that's right. What would we have to, like, we're so egocentric, we think that they would just reach out, but what would we have to offer them? And the fact that this stuff that is around us and interacting with us is interacting with us means we have something to offer them. So let's put that out there as just something to mull over. But the thing that he said that was a step too far in the dumb direction that it was just so obvious to me was he said, and also, if they're 1,000 years ahead of us, then we would be like ants to them. And what do we do to ants? We step on them. And I thought, wait a minute, ants are not 1,000 years behind us, and we step on them because we're tall. And there's a size disproportion, unless you're saying there's a land of giants that can't recognize us as sentient beings because we're so tiny.
Yeah,
but that just didn't. Maybe this is nitpicking, but that didn't make any sense to me. You might as well just say
Galactus. It's Galactus. I mean, that's
yeah. Like, why would a scientist say that? It just sounded like that is stupid. Like, why would you say that? There is no. And if we did know that ants were sentient, we would be like, holy poop, we're Gulliver's Travels.
I think it could have something to do with that. The same audience that's watching this newscast also watches such luminaries as the Kardashians. I'm just saying.
That could be it.
But what I don't really get, I mean, especially when you talk about, that SETI's going to aim its telescopes at it and see if it can hear anything. That's great if you can hear something. What will you hear that will make you say, this is definitely a civilization? Because after all, they have mistaken pulsars for alien signals and all sorts of other natural phenomena. And what if this is something we haven't heard before? And so now we've got this thing that looks like a megastructure, and it's something we haven't heard before, but we haven't seen something like this before, allegedly, right? So how are you going to differentiate that? It's all just so very far away. It's hard for us to see it. And here's the other point. If it is a megastructure, chances are the star that it's blocking light out from is being harnessed as an energy source, meaning they probably have enough to send a message here. They aren't.
Well, that's the other thing.
If we can see them, it's pretty well established, I think, by this point that they should be able to see us. They're not saying anything.
Well, why is there even an assumption that is like some sort of free energy device out there in space? Like, it's just like,
again, that's a human thing too. I mean, there's the other thing, a megastructure. Well, that would be something we might do. We're not talking about us,
And do they ever explain, maybe they do and I just don't know, but it seems like, okay, so if you've got the Big Bang Theory, or some version of it where the universe is expanding, then that means that all the really old civilizations are further in of that expansion.
Right.
So do they know that this system is not further along in the expanding universe than we are, and that's how they tell that it would be 1,000-year-old civilization or something? Like, how do they deduce this?
You know what? I don't even know. I don't even know. Do they know the direction in which the universe is expanding away from us?
That's what I'm asking, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, do they know that? I don't know that they even know that. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, where's the?
Because if you did know that, what I would do if I were a scientist and I knew that information, I would aim those radio telescopes in front of the expansion to get to the really dumb cultures like us.
Right. Yeah.
Coming upon radio signals.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that whole story that you're talking about, that really kind of, like, I posted it on Paranormal Waypoint, but I thought, this is really weird. Like, is this it? And I saw a couple people who are astronomers that I know on Facebook who actually said, this is very interesting. I don't know. This might be it. And I'm like, really? This is how we find it? I just want to know what they're seeing. And if they're seeing something that is moving around, can we see that? Can we get video, please? Somehow? Give me something. These stories, we never get to see it. It's always like, well, they're looking at something that's circling the star. It looks ordered, and okay.
Yeah, how about aiming the Hubble there instead of SETI? SETI nonsense.
Well, I mean, Kepler is the one that saw it, so I mean, ostensibly they're already doing that. But what? Let me see the pictures. What are you looking at? I mean, my bet is that we probably wouldn't know how to interpret such a thing, and they do, and that's the reason we don't get shot every picture that they take. But
so
what is it?
How is it that they're able to take a look at a blip of light on a screen and explain that, but not UFO footage of blip of light on the screen in our very own sky? Like, why is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Come on, Jeff, you've got answers. Oh, well, I guess our time is up.
Because most of the blips of light are fireworks, stars, or crazy people with street lamps. Yeah, I mean, the truly anomalous stuff, I only need to point at the Google balloon, right? The big long thing that looked like a tuning fork that, guy shot video through his telescope of it, and it was a big story. Linda Moulton Howe was convinced it was aliens. And of course, it's turned out to be something that they were working on for, I don't know, wireless connection or something. And that's all it was. But no scientist could even tell us what that was. And that was a public enterprise. A company had put that thing up there. So, I mean, whatever. I think science is great. I think science is the reason we are where we are right now, but it's not a magic, it's not a magic wand that they know everything and that's it. I think, I'll tell you the God's honest truth. When I first saw the Kepler story about this megastructure, the first thing I thought was the war on science has reached a fever pitch, and they're hoping that something like this engages people enough to be interested in some form of science that's being done. And that's it. That's the only reason this story would come out. But who knows? You're reading the Nat Geo story called The War on Science. It was a cover story some months ago. It's really freaking distressing. I got to tell you. I mean, it's really distressing. And it's when you become aware that idiocracy would actually be blissful if you were in the idiocracy. When you're not, it's terrible. Like here's what I'll leave everybody with. This is the last words I'm saying. I swear to God. On this show tonight, that is. Was at my desk at work, and one of the people I work with, I asked him, I said, did you watch the Democratic debate? No, I turned it off. It was just too boring for me, which I just, as a Democrat, I went, really? Like, really? And then they said something along the lines of, they asked what were the two most important problems facing the world today. And this is how this was said. One was radical terrorism, and the other one was like climate change. And I was like, what? What did you just say? And climate change was said like, what is that about? That was literally how that was said. And I said, well, that is a pretty big problem. Yeah, and it was very clear that this person was completely oblivious to climate change being a real problem. Republican, by the way. But that's irrelevant to the point. It just,
or is it?
I was like, well, yeah. I was just like, really, can it really be that bad? And the answer is yes, it can be that bad. And so you wonder, is science trying to actively engage the public now in something that they will find interesting, aliens, that will help them learn more about space, cosmology, whatever. Just get them into something to stimulate them. I don't know. I mean, it's really distressing. I'm supposed to do a Project Archivist show about this, and hopefully by the time this airs, that will have aired. But the war on science is a really distressing thing to me, and it's only getting substantially worse. Like the post that I saw on Facebook the other day by some woman who had seen the movie Titanic, and she got home and she said, "I had no idea that it was based on a true story." And I look at that and I go, this reminds me of the people that I read about and saw their posts on Facebook who were in the theater for the screening of The Martian, saying, "This is based off a true story, right?" I just said, okay, I've had enough. I want out.
We all want to get off this planet.
It's like, if we do get to Mars, you don't get to go. If you think The Martian was based off a true story.
Or go first, I think would be the other answer.
Well, yeah, you go first. You go first. I hear you can walk around naked there all day long. So have at it, folks, Now, we don't want all that mess to clean up when we get there.
Yes, so, that true story is called Total Recall, by the way. You should point that out to them next time.
Yes. So, there it is. And I share your aggravation with some branches of science and how quick they are to jump on these just really out of the blue, picked out of the air things. I get it. But, I just wonder, could it be that they're trying to engage people? I don't know. It's just a thought. But anyway, we're out of time, Jeremy.
Oh, thank God. Because remember before when I said I knew the value of this program? I think it's like $1.99, isn't it? So you're right. The less time we spend here, the better.
Right. Oh, my.
You're welcome, everybody.
We know how to flush it all right down the tube, don't we?
Toilet Elf awaits.
At any rate, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jeremy, and I sincerely appreciate it. And we will probably be back next week because we haven't even canned 5 shows yet in this preliminary strike. So you'll probably be hearing us next week with either guest or not, having more discussions like what you heard tonight. So if you found this at all stimulating, you can email us at paratopia@gmail.com.
No.
Or
you've already forgotten what the email is.
paratopiapodcast@gmail.com.
And name the show, by the way. Put the name of the show in the subject line so we know. Oculus.
That's right.
Succulent. I don't know what.
That's right. So paratopiapodcast@gmail.com. And let us know if you have thoughts or comments or suggestions or vitriol, whatever you like. Just throw it out. Throw it our way. And with that, Jeremy,
Peace.
Good night, all.